Amy Thurman back again with 100 Days, 100 Emotions. We're on day 43 today. We're talking about empathy. Remember that the goal of this is to help us realize that emotions and feelings are normal. They are part of being human, that we all have them, we all feel them, and that they can be used for good, that they're there to teach us something. And, excuse me, and we're here to talk about what we can learn from them and how they can help us. So, if you have watched any of these, or this is your first one, and you would like to catch some of the others, just go to hashtag 100 days, 100 emotions. That's the number 100 on streaming live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and you can catch the others. If you would like to be a guest, I would love to plug you in. I would love to find an emotion that works for you that you would like to talk about, and we'll get you fixed up. I would love to have you as a special guest. And secret, I have an exciting opportunity available for all of my special guests that I'm not announcing yet. I'm just telling you, I'm giving you a little teaser that I have something exciting in store for all of my special guests. So if you're interested in being a part of that, then I would love to get you plugged in as well. Okay, let's get into this. Excuse me, hope my throat can make it through. My guest today, welcome, Kathy. This is Kathy Garrett. She's here to help us talk about empathy. I'm so glad you're here, Kathy.
Thank you, Amy. I'm really excited to not only get to meet you face to face, because we've done a lot of DMs, but I'm excited to get to share with you what empathy means to me too. So thank you for
Oh,
having me.
of course, of course. Yes, it's
Yeah.
funny. I love how the internet works where we can get to know people like this, talk to them through the internet, but then getting to see them face to face, oh, it's just makes my heart so happy because it's like you can really feel their energy. You can really get a sense of them a lot better when you can see them face to face. So I'm excited to get to know you a little bit better today too.
Yeah.
So we're talking about empathy today. Let me pop this up here and let's get into it. Empathy is the capacity to understand or feel what another person is experiencing from their perspective. It involves the ability to share in the emotions, thoughts, and feelings of others. And so I thought, oh, how perfect is this, for this series because we're talking about thoughts, feelings, and emotions and how they rule our world. And so empathy is a perfect one. It's one of the 100 because it's something that hopefully we feel and we have felt and that we're using it for good. And so, Kathy, I would love for you to share with us your experience with empathy and what you have learned from it or what it has taught you.
So a little bit of backstory with about my story and pertaining to empathy is about 4 years ago, I had a very severe delivery with my second daughter. Very nearly died. And so it's not only taught me to be more empathetic to others, but to myself as well. I think growing up and kind of in my early, kind of marriage and when after we had our first daughter, I think empathy to me, I've always kind of been an empathetic, compassionate person, but I never thought to be empathetic to not only myself, but it deepened that empathy that I showed others. And so, as I was kind of doing my homework for tonight, I also found basically the same definition you did, but I thought the comparison of empathy versus sympathy was really interesting. And so, empathy is shown in how much compassion and understanding we can give to another, but then sympathy is more of a feeling of pity for another. And
Mm,
so, I want to talk a little bit about sympathy and pity. And I feel like sometimes in our society, um, pity can have kind of a negative connotation, but I don't think that it needs to. Because if, I don't know, say, Amy, you came up to me on the street and you're like, my toe hurts, like, well, that's probably a bad example. I've probably stubbed my toe before, but so in your situation, I don't know what it's like to break my neck and, lie in a bed. I think you said 23 hours a day. Like I can't understand fully what that is like, but I can sit with you and learn compassion and have compassion for your situation. But then having that pity, I don't know, I just feel like having pity for another doesn't have to be a negative thing. It can be a positive thing. And in my situation, it's made me more empathetic because it's made me slow down a lot. I was left with pretty severe side effects. I had a stroke at the same time. And I have, yeah, you could say, wow, it's been a long road. I still have right-sided weakness from my stroke and have been in and out of rehab for over 4 years. Um, and so, yeah, it's made me slow down a lot. It definitely, I'm thankful that God saved my life, but it's changed our life a lot. Um, but yeah, I think it has taught me a lot more empathy towards others. And I don't know, I think prior to doing my homework for tonight, I always thought of sympathy as kind of just the way that you related to another. Um, but then empathy is kind of really putting yourself in that person's shoes. And so I think while I can't fully understand what it's like to break my neck, I can try to think about ways in which it did affect you, especially lying in bed the majority of the day and really not having a lot of, I'm guessing, the physical capabilities that you had prior to breaking your neck.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. It to me, thinking about empathy and sympathy, sympathy to me is almost like I'm so glad that didn't happen to me.
Mm,
Like that's the feeling that you get when you're sympathetic. Like you're feeling for the person, but on the inside it's like I'm glad I didn't have to, or I haven't had to go through that. Where I think with empathy, it's like you're actually going through it with that person.
mm,
Like you're feeling it alongside with them. And you said it, I'm the same way. I'm such an empathetic person. I have been that way my whole life. And it can be exhausting because right? It can be
you know, you know,
exhausting.
you know.
Exactly. Because you're feeling that with them. Like you want to
Mm,
help them so badly that you feel it with them, and it kind of takes on your body as well, or it can, until we learn how to not allow it to do that. And that's the thing that I want people to know is that we can be empathetic. We can feel that empathy without allowing it to take over our bodies and our feelings and our emotions
mhm,
like we do at first when you're first starting to feel that emotion. And
mhm.
so I assume that you have experienced that. Would you mind talking about that for a minute?
About, kind of emotionally draining myself.
Yeah, about how you keep from doing that. If did you have to go through a process to learn that? Um,
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. As you were talking, the first thing that popped in my head was boundaries. And, not only physical, tangible boundaries, but emotional boundaries as well. It's so important I'm a huge advocate for self-care. And even on my podcast, I released an episode today where we talked about how self-care can look different for everybody. Like, what might be self-care to myself may not be something that you enjoy. So obviously it's not going to feel like caring for yourself if it were Amy's self-care. And I think I, not only am I a huge advocate for self-care, but I'm a huge advocate for boundaries. And it just, that's a huge thing I had to learn. And after getting married, was not only boundaries with friends and families, but even boundaries with my husband. Having survived a near-death experience related to delivering my daughter, obviously her birthday, while it's this massive celebration, there are complexities there. I think,
good.
yeah, the first couple of years, I always tried to kind of separate the days, so to speak. Like, I celebrate her birthday.
Compartmentalize, yeah.
Yeah, but, this year I felt like the Lord was really pressing on my heart to say, or to accept it, that I can't change. I can't compartmentalize the days. Like, the day that she was born will always be the day that both of our lives were in danger. And I think while compartmentalization is important, especially with boundaries, Sometimes there are situations that you can't compartmentalize. And while this year in particular, I did really, really great all day up until like 30 minutes prior to myself going to bed. I went for a walk and my husband, said, well, I'll come with you. And I was like, actually, I want to be by myself right now. I want to process what I'm feeling. And yeah, I just went on a walk by myself and, talked to the Lord about what I was feeling. And so yeah, needless to say, huge advocate for boundaries, even within my marriage and within my family.
Yes. You're talking about, you would call it anniversary, but that's like a celebration, but it's what it is. It's an anniversary of what happened.
Yes.
And I feel the same thing. Like mine is August 26th and not August, April, sorry, April 26th. And for the first several years, I would, like, for days before that date, I would dread that date coming. I would just anticipate it and just be a mess for several days before that. And like you, was eventually able to work through that, where this last year I was driving my son and somewhere on that day and happened to look at a marquee and it said the date. And I was like, oh, that's today. Like it just,
Wow.
I was able to, it's taken, well, it's been 9 years. So it's taken that long to work through it. But yeah, it's so interesting. And you're talking about, setting boundaries as far as self-care. For those of you watching, I created a 10 steps to showing yourself self-love. It's just a little flyer that I created. And you said it, self-care is different for every person. And one of the steps on there is to fire the friends that are not good for you. And you're talking about boundaries. It's fire them, if it took me a long time to get to that point where I was like, if they're not good for me, if I don't want to be like them, if they're not encouraging me in the direction I want to go, then I need to fire them, in a gentle way, of course. But I so agree with everything you're saying, that it's so different for each person. And I feel like some people watching may experience empathy, but not on a deep level, like you and I do, because I feel like there are people who really are much more empathetic than others. But I am curious, for those of you watching, what does empathy mean to you? Because, we've talked about how it's different than sympathy, but I feel like empathy can have a different meaning to each person, because like for Kathy and I, ours is really deep. We have deep-seated empathy, but to other people, it may just be, a very not superficial, but it may not be deep-seated like that. It may be something that, comes and goes. And so I'd be curious to know if you would, for those of you watching, share with us what empathy means to you. And if you would like to share an experience, I would love to know more about that too. I don't know, Kathy, how much I'm going to ask, feel free to tell me this is off limits or that you don't want to talk about it, but your experience, it's just mind-blowing to me. I would love to know more about, and if you want to go ahead and share a little bit about what you do now, because I'm thinking, when I was pregnant with my third child, I was 38. I was 39 when he was born, so I was a high-risk pregnancy, but I had cerebral spinal fluid leaks while I was pregnant with him. Yeah. And so talking about laying flat, it started then. I had to lay flat because I couldn't sit up. But it took them a while to figure out that's what was going on, because I couldn't sit up without my head feeling like it was like there's a train sitting on it. And so it was traumatic. Like he was born into that trauma situation of me being in constant pain. And so I know probably yours, it's different what you do, but I'm just thinking, I wonder if that falls into something that you do. Does that make sense?
You broke up a little bit there at the end. What
Oh,
was the last thing you said?
I said, I'm just wondering, I know it's maybe different than what you do, the practice that you do, but I just wondered if that falls into something that you cover in your practice.
Yeah, so I have a podcast called Birth Trauma Stories, and the tagline is holding space and finding light after perinatal trauma. So we have all people of all walks of life come on the show, and a lot of people have told me how in the past, they journal about their story, or they maybe tell a friend, or maybe write a blog post, but they don't feel like in the, I guess, virtual world, so to speak, that there was really a space to where they could share their story of perinatal trauma. And it started after I had an amniotic fluid embolism. And
Oh, okay.
basically what happens is amniotic fluid gets into the mother's bloodstream, which happens during pregnancy, and for whatever reason my body saw it as a danger and
Mhm.
basically had kind of like an allergic reaction, basically, and basically just started shutting down my heart, my lungs, etc. And I was in a coma for 9 days, and over the course of those 9 days needed several surgeries and even a life support machine called ECMO. That's kind of like the highest form of life support. So my husband was told, she has a 1% chance of survival. Like, thank goodness I take after my dad, and I'm a huge fighter. I always have been. But, I never knew that not only would I need every ounce of my fight, but a lot of the Lord's fighting on my behalf. But um, I'm trying to remember. I think it was in 2020 or maybe early 2021. I'd been kind of tossing around the idea to start a podcast, but at that point, my recovery, like my rehab schedule, was still really crazy, and I still wasn't driving at that point, and so I really needed to focus on healing a little bit more. And so I had to wait another year, and we launched in March of 2022. And my heart behind starting the podcast was really just having a space, just like the tagline says, having a space for perinatal trauma survivors to process their birth trauma verbally, and kind of creating a community. I also host a free virtual support group once a month. Right now it meets on the second Tuesday of the month, and we just get online and talk about what's happening that month. Like, so my daughter's birthday is in September, so this month in particular was a little challenging. So it
Yeah.
was nice to have people um, online who, I've never met in person. One in particular, she lives in Canada. She reached out and said, I know this is your birth trauma anniversary month. I just want to check in and see how you're doing. And I think a lot for many of my guests, they say to me how in their real life, people kind of move on and don't really understand that perinatal trauma can last years and years and years. Like you said with your accident, it was about nine. Well, I'm sorry, you said you were 9 years in now, but it took several years before before the anniversary didn't feel like, it took your breath away. And so that's really my heart in starting the podcast, and just having that space, a safe space for people to process what's going on in their life in relation to their perinatal trauma. I think also there's not a lot of conversation around, well, what happens when perinatal trauma either leaves you or the baby or both disabled. And so
Mm.
in my situation, I was a stay-at-home mom prior to my birth trauma. And yeah, I'm not able to be the full-time caregiver of my kids anymore. I'm working really hard to get there, but it's a process and it takes time. Um, I hope
Yes.
I hope one day God will open that door again, but we'll see. I'm anxiously awaiting to see what happens. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
That's I, have totally been there where I could not take care of my family or my people either. And so I understand a lot of what you're experiencing and from a different perspective. But I do want to say that I want to share this comment with you
I'd
from one
love
of our
it.
viewers right now. Can you see it? Can you see the comments?
I don't think I can.
Um, Kate has just shared with us through a comment that she said, I cannot believe this is coming up today. She suffered with perinatal trauma Thank you for sharing this. Not enough awareness or support is on this
Oh,
topic, that she's so thankful for you. It gives me chills just reading
oh,
that. Oh my goodness. So, Kate, you're going to need to connect with Kathy for sure. And we'll get that, her website. Let me go ahead and share this. Where did it go? While we're talking about it, Kathy's website is birthtraumastories.com. And so, Kathy, can they find that group that you were talking about at your website?
yeah. So on the website, if you go to the menu, there's a resource page, and I love alliteration. So the support group is called the Trauma Tribe, and yeah, you'll just click on the link there, and it will take you to a Google form for you to fill out. So I can send you the link to sign up.
Oh, so good. Kate is from Australia. So
Wow.
I know. Isn't
Hi,
that so
Kate. It's
cool?
so nice to meet you. I can't wait to hear more about your story and how I can be supporting you.
She says, thank you so much. So,
Oh,
oh,
that's
so
so
good.
kind.
Another reason I do this, to connect people who can
Yes,
help each other like this. Oh my goodness, my heart is just bursting with joy right now, about to
mine
be in
too.
tears. Oh, so, so thankful. And it is interesting to me how this happens. Like, it doesn't happen by accident. Like, Kate is in
No.
Australia. She's watching right now. You're on right now, Kathy. The two of you connected through this. Oh, so, so good. I love it so much. Okay. All right. We really need to move on, but I'm just like, oh, I want to be in this moment because it's so, so
Yeah,
good. Oh,
so
so
good.
good. Okay, so let's move on. I have an AI image generator that I use to create an image that represents the emotion of the day. And so I ask it to create an image that represents empathy. And all of these are mind blowing to me. Just the way that it takes that word and pulls up and creates this image is fascinating to me. Today's almost brought me to tears. Literally, when I
Wow.
saw it, I was like, oh my word. And I love these images because I learned so much from them. Like, you can see so much in them that we don't pull out before that, it literally speaks beyond words. And so I'm excited to pull this up. I'm going to pull it up and then I'll full screen it so that we can take a better look at
Oh,
it
wow.
here. But look at that.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Isn't it? Oh my goodness. And I think there's so much to this, but I think, look at all, it's almost like a beautiful chaos. Like, because it's like, it almost looks like it has a pattern. Like, it almost looks like a bow. That blue line in there almost looks like a bow. And of course, the heart there. But I think the chaos is probably like we're feeling what the other person is feeling, but in such a beautiful way, you know? Oh,
Absolutely. I think the way I look at it too is, like you said, the chaos is kind of at the bottom, but then there's this beautiful light, especially behind the heart, and it's almost like you're kind of giving your heart to that other person. It's kind of
oh.
the way I interpret this image. It's really, really stunning.
Isn't it? That's why I said it literally almost brought me to tears because, like, there's just so much to it that could really, really be, oh, I just can't digest it all at one, in one sitting. So, those of you watching, I would love for you to help analyze this, or if there are other things in this image that jump out at you, please share those with us. Because, like I said, I learned so much from looking at the images and from what other people see in them as well, because my brain doesn't always do that real well. But just like you said, Kathy, I didn't pull that out until you said it. And so, oh, that's so good. It's
Oh,
so
thank you.
beautiful. Let me take this off there. Okay, so empathy. So, such a good session today. Oh my goodness, Kathy, thank you again so much for being here. I am so excited for people to be able to contact you and get in touch with you. I'm going to share one more time your website, Birth Trauma Stories, and I'm assuming that they can find your podcast from your website.
Yes.
Okay, they can go on there. And are you accepting guests for your podcast if they have birth trauma stories? Are you interested in knowing more about those?
Absolutely. So we or I kind of do the entire realm of perinatal trauma. So that could be, trying to conceive community. It could be trauma during pregnancy. It could be trauma during the actual delivery, like myself, or postpartum trauma. It's kind of the entire gamut. We don't exclude anyone who, is, experienced any sort of perinatal trauma. So yeah, I would love to have people reach out.
Okay, yeah, that's great. And because I was thinking perinatal, like explain that just real quick. What does that mean?
So that basically means from the point that you can become pregnant up until a year postpartum. So a year after
Oh,
you have your baby. It's kind of encompassing that entire time.
okay. I did not know that. It covers a year after.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Sorry, my brain is like whirring now. That's fascinating. But it's like Kate said, like, this is not talked about enough. There's not enough support out there because so many people go through this and they need support. They need other people who have gone through it to be able to relate to and, to just feel like they're more normal. Like what they're dealing with is kind of normal for them,
Yeah.
So
And that ties right into empathy, right? Like, I remember after my severe perinatal trauma, I was struggling to bond with my daughter, and it was another AFE survivor who said to me, this was probably about 4 months postpartum. And she said to me, it took about 6 months for me to bond with my son. Don't worry, you'll get there. So just that little, like, oh, you too, me too. It'll be okay. And like looking back, no wonder I struggled to bond with her. I had like 6 rehospitalizations that first year, so it was just like I wasn't around her, I wasn't taking care of her. I wasn't spending time with her. And like I said, just having that we in the AFE community, we call each other sisters. So we're not really sisters, but we have the AFE in common.
yeah.
And but yeah, just having someone else say like, "Oh, me too. It'll be okay."
I love that so much. My heart is just like, oh, so, so good. Oh my goodness. Kathy, thank you so, so much for being here and being willing to share your story and help us learn more about empathy versus sympathy and what you have to offer the world, how you're helping others. I love it so much. I'm so, so thankful for you and for your time on here with us today.
Thank you so much, Amy. I thoroughly enjoyed tonight.
I'm so glad. Me too. Me too. Okay, those of you who are watching, thank you for being here. Thank you for being supportive of this series. Like I said, if you want to catch the others, it's hashtag 100 days, 100 emotions, the number 100, streaming live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If you would like to be a special guest, let me know either through a comment or send me a message, and I will definitely get you plugged in. If you have found this helpful or think it will be helpful for others, please share it. We would love to be able to reach other people with this message or with any of these messages. So thank you again for watching. And until tomorrow, I'll be back with a different emotion. Bye.
Bye-bye.